Who am I?
Richard Kazimer, media veteran.
Why I got in radio is because I'm good with a knife.
Contributor in Australia.
Our friend Richard Kazimer in the United States.
How are you guys enjoying the 19th century? Is that working out for you? How can you say, I'm not making fun of you as a race, I'm making fun of you as black performers?
I think as a country, Americans are as patriotic as the most rabid UK football hooligan.
Who am I?
Richard S. Kazimer.
Balls Radio with Phil Dobbie.
Well, let's start our trip all over the world on Balls Radio. We're not just about Australia. We look at what's happening in other countries as well. Now, normally, of course, we'd also go to the UK, but John Dobbie's not available this week. But we can go to the United States with Richard Kazimer. And last week, we talked about Obama's call for changes to immigration. So we discussed how a lot of people living illegally were probably working below minimum wage because they had that big threat hanging over them that they'd be deported or reported if they demanded that they have a pay increase. So Obama's doing something about this. He's recognized the people who are living unlawfully and allowed them to stay in the country. He's pushing ahead with this using his executive powers, which means he can do it without the vote of either house, curiously, in the United States, but that's the way it works. But this is going to affect a lot of lives because we're talking millions of people, aren't we?
We are. The best president of the United States, Barack Obama, showed the world this past week that just because you're a lame duck doesn't mean you don't have any teeth. As expected, albeit 6 years late, Obama enacted his rightful executive action privilege by bypassing Congress on Thursday and granting deportation relief to nearly 5 million immigrants who have been living in the United States illegally for many years, sometimes generations. Now, the order specifically protects parents of children who are born in the United States and who automatically become U.S. citizens, and also protects those who arrived in the States as children. All of these people have long established ties as de facto U.S. citizens. And what he did was when he, in this 15-minute speech to the American public on national television, which very few networks even carried, President Obama reiterated that mass amnesty for the estimated 11 million undocumented illegal immigrants in the United States would be unfair, as would a mass deportation of that same 11 million. So what he's doing is he's trying to find a common ground approach, as he calls it, for those folks that are living in the shadows, and for those people to now come forward with full amnesty to get right with the law. Again, his words. The action does not protect anyone who has a felony or a criminal record, and immigration officials will now be going after them in record numbers to deport them to wherever they came from.
So I can see some repercussions on this. But before we get to those, this is the second time, the last 2 weeks, you've opened up by saying the best American president, Obama. So are you saying in your mind he's the best president you've ever had? Or the best, I mean, clearly he's the best president you've got at the moment because he's the only one. So why the intro?
Well, the numbers don't lie, and I'm throwing this back into the Republican haters here who cannot stand President Obama. They have been calling him, and there's a meme going around that Obama is the worst president of the United States. So as a progressive, I just throw it back there, and as a pundit, I do the same thing. But the numbers don't lie, and if you look at what he inherited, the devastation that happened under the George W. Bush administration in ruining the economy, saving the auto industry, just on and on and on of what this man has accomplished in the past 6 years. It is, I mean, a single-digit unemployment, which was unheard of. He inherited a double-digit unemployment figures. Now we're down to below 6%. So that in itself is that is the tell. I'm sure he won't be recognized his accomplishments until long after he's out of office. But the guy has done phenomenal things in this country to turn it around.
Often the way, isn't it? We don't recognize our politicians until we've moved on. But I tell you, if you are successful, then the other side is going to hate you because they don't want you in power. And if you're successful, that means you're popular, and they wouldn't like that very much. But it looks like he's not. It's not totally reflected in the opinion polls, is it? Though, so he is going to get recognized for his achievements after the event, I suspect.
We had mentioned this before, that any time a president during his usually the 6-year itch, 6 years into a term, two-term, if you're lucky enough to be elected 2 terms, is that the American public tires of any incumbent president, regardless of how good they are. His numbers are still higher than some previous presidents, but people just are bored and they get apathetic and they go, okay, let's get somebody else in there. I don't care what they do. I'm tired of this. It's like eating pizza every single day. Yeah. No matter how much you love it, you get tired of it. So
let's get back to this immigration, these new immigration laws. Then, so he's using executive powers basically. So he's saying, I don't need to go for a vote on this. I am the president. I can use my executive powers and I can make a law that says that all these people now can be recognized legally. So has he made that call? Are those executive powers passed? Can these people now come forward and start claiming their legality?
Yes, I mean the ball needs to start rolling. I guess the details are still out there as to what the process will be. There will be some more details coming out as to what the process will be for these people to come forward. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of apprehension where there's a distrust of the American government, regardless of who's in charge, of being fearful of being turned in and deported.
You're not going to be rushing into the police station, are you? I mean, you live there for that long.
Yeah, you go to the immigration offices in your local cities and follow through. It's simple enough to do. The message will need to get out, certainly in the Hispanic communities, which is predominantly makes up the largest portion of illegal immigrants in the United States.
But what I'm asking, I guess the question I'm asking is it written into law? Can they do it safely now? Or is it the sort of thing where they could go in and say, hey, look, here I am. I've been hiding all this time. Now I can come down from living in the ceiling. And they go, actually, those laws didn't pass. Sorry about that. But now we know who you are. Thanks. Here's your deportation. I mean, can they do it safely?
Absolutely, because he went on national television, and when the president speaks and says, yes, we can now do this and it's safe, you can pretty much take him at his word, his or her word, whoever becomes the next president. And otherwise, who do you trust? If you can't trust the president of saying everything is safe, let's get this done, then what's the point?
But if he's, you talked about impeachment. So if the other side says, if the Republicans go, well, you're not allowed to do that, that's beyond your powers, we're going to impeach you, can they retract that? And if it's retracted, are they still safe? I guess. And
no.
That's what people would be thinking, though, surely.
No. For one thing, the GOP throws out impeachment whichever way the wind blows. They can't stand President Obama for a myriad of reasons, not the least of which because he's black. But they can't stand him, and they will obstruct everything he does. However, with an executive action that the president has, he told the GOP up front 6 years ago, let's resolve this immigration issue. If you don't do it, I'll do it. And as I said, it took Obama 6 years, much to the consternation of a lot of people out there, least of all the Hispanic community, to get something done. And finally, he did it. Is he doing it as part of his legacy? Absolutely. He's got 2 years to get this thing going. What's funny, too, Phil, is that masters of revisionist history, the Republicans, have purposely ignored the facts that President George H.W. Bush, the senior, used the same executive action to block the deportation of almost 1.5 million people back in 1990. President Ronald Reagan did the same thing. He signed into law an amnesty bill giving legal status to 3 million undocumented immigrants, and then another 100,000 the very next year in 1987. So what the GOP can do, I think they're pretty much toothless here. They're going to grind the last 2 years of this administration to as much of a halt as they possibly can by tying things up with congressional subcommittee hearings and more threats of lawsuits and impeachment process. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. All they do is spin wheels and waste the government's money.
Well, it's a pretty simple argument, isn't it? If there's 11 million people who don't have the papers to live in the country, you can either deport them, which means 11 million people who probably many businesses are relying on because they're working for them, as you said last week, below minimum wage in many cases. Or if you're not going to deport them, then you just have to recognize them. And it's a very simple decision, surely. It's not particularly complicated, is it?
A deportation of 11 million people is logistically impossible. That will never happen.
Yeah, exactly. So now, as we in Australia head towards new data retention legislation that's going to see phone companies keeping 2 years of their customers' phone and internet records for the authorities to analyze and do what they want with, interestingly, with very little interest from the public here in Australia. We love being snooped on, clearly. We don't care how much information the authorities have on us. But it seems in the United States there's moves afoot to try and restrict how much the National Security Agency agency keeps in terms of citizens' call data. So tell me about this. I mean, what are they holding at the moment? Or I guess it's the N.S.A. Nobody knows, apart from the fact they've got a lot of data because they're building this huge data center to house it all.
And as much as the GOP screams like little girls in its fear of the unfettered big government intervention, it had no problem this week shutting down a bill that would restrict the National Security Agency's phone and email data collection powers. The bill was a result of the recent N.S.A. overreaches that even included spying on members of the House and Senate who were looking into how the N.S.A. got information.
Well, of course they would.
So what happened was this bill that was shot down by Republicans who now control the House and Senate. This bill would have still allowed analysts to conduct what's called a contact chaining, which they would trace a suspect's networks of contacts. But the NSA would now be required to get a court order, a brand new court order, that would allow them to expeditiously obtain only those records that were linked to the suspects up to 2 layers, and even though if the layers were held by different phone companies. Now, are you confused? Well, so am I.
So I think by 2 layers, they're saying, so if you're a suspected terrorist and you're calling me, then they can go, right, okay, well, he's an interesting guy now as well, so I'm the first layer, so let's track all his calls, and then everybody who I call becomes the second layer. But given that they say everybody is 3 steps away from everybody else on the planet, 2 layers out of 3 is quite far-reaching, isn't it?
Yeah. And now this bill had the support of the companies who are involved. Apple, Yahoo, Microsoft, Google, they were all involved in this, and they all supported this new bill that was proposed, among other people, by President Obama. More importantly, the fact of this and the necessity of this bill was as a result of the now I told you so Edward Snowden, a former N.S.A. contractor who's now still living in Russia as a wanted criminal for exposing the N.S.A.'s unlimited reach. Now, what happened, though, is that this bill was actually in a watered-down version, was approved back in May. But the new GOP regime just said, no, we don't want any sort of restrictions on the NSA that they also claim as part of the big government that we should not have. And they're saying that this would only enable terrorists like ISIS if we start limiting the NSA's ability to track down contacts of suspected terrorist groups like ISIS. And ISIS, as we all know, are the biggest users of the latest technology in their ability to denounce technology. So again, Phil, this is absolutely no reason whatsoever to do this, to shoot down this bill, other than it was a bill that was supported by President Obama.
So, but is it big news over there? Do people care? Yes. I mean, as I said here, you know, we're pushing to keep 2 years of data about people living in this country, Australian citizens, so that authorities can have access to their phone records, including where they are. So where your mobile phone makes calls from, including internet calls. In other words, every time you access the internet, which it pretty much means for 2 years, they'll be able to keep a trace of where you were, assuming you take your mobile phone with you, plus internet records. I mean, these are far-reaching powers, far greater than, for example, in the UK. And what does the average Aussie have to say about it? They don't even know it's going on. So I'm just curious as to whether, you know, whether people care that much in the US.
As we become more tech savvy, and as we are specifically buying cell phones and smartphones that have encrypted in it anti-spying software, yes, this has become an issue. I mean, you've got a certain percentage of the population that say, I don't get it, I don't understand, I'm not doing anything wrong, therefore I don't care who's spying on me. And then you've got another section of the population that says, I don't want any of my data being collected by anybody for any reason, because that's, especially your emails and your location where you are at any time when you turn on your phone, because then we start to get deluged with advertisements. And how is it that any company knows where I am at any given time, spending money on whatever products? And then that security has become an issue here in the United States. People do not want anybody other than their immediate friends and family to know where the hell they are at any given time. So, yeah, I think it's going to become even a more growing issue. It's also something that people are using as a marketing tool to say, our new phones, our new technology is going to keep you safe from the N.S.A.
So the interesting, I mean, this is a big topic, and as you know, I'm all across this because it's my portfolio as a journalist to look at technology, particularly telecommunications. It'd be interesting to know in the United States, and I need to look into this more, but just on this location data. So the location data that as to where your phone is at any precise time, phone companies obviously need to know that because they need to send phone calls to you. So if someone calls you, they need to know what cell tower they're going to send it to. So, but they don't keep that record. Once the call's completed, it's what's called transitory data. They delete it because they don't need it anymore. They don't need it for billing purposes, and it would just be such a huge amount of data to collect if they were to store where everyone is at every precise moment. But it seems that now authorities are saying, but we want that data. So phone companies, can you start, which just blows out the amount of data they keep. Can you start collecting this data? It'd be interesting to see whether that's happening in the United States, whether they're being asked to keep it. Because that's a biggie. That, where everyone is. For authorities to know where everyone is at any point for the last couple of years, to me, seems like a big deal. I mean, what you're doing on the internet is one thing, but actually knowing where you are at any point in time, that's, do they need to know that? I wonder.
Well, that has been an issue in the past, is how much data has been collected and how long it's been stored, whether it's been under the auspices of any telecommunications company or another line coming out due to government intervention or government order and going into another data collection storage facility that any of these telecommunications companies are saying, well, okay, I don't know who's doing it, but there's a pipeline going in there and we don't care about it. So that's the problem.
And easier to do with fiber technology. You're just sort of mirroring the signal, the fiber optic signal. Quite easy to do, apparently. So almost certainly happening if it's easy to do, isn't it? Now, there's some controversy over plans to build a massive oil pipeline from Canada down to the Gulf Coast, down in Texas. So what's the issue here? Is it the pipeline itself, or is it we talked about this, I think, before in the past, haven't we, about this huge tar sands oil field that's in Canada, and tar sand is it's like getting oil from bitumen on roads, isn't it? So it's just like a really sticky oil that just emits more than conventional fuel, and there's controversy around whether in fact tar sands oil is should be touched. Are we that desperate for oil that we're going to go for dirty oil? So is the controversy about this pipeline the controversy really about whether Canada should be extracting all this tar sands oil? Is that the issue here?
The issue is, we don't care what Canada does. The fact is that this pipeline, as you say, which is coming from Alberta, the tar sand fields of Alberta, Canada, and traversing.
I think the planet cares about what they do, though. If they are extracting oil that is just a very dirty fuel, we want to see less of that, obviously.
Well, we don't need it. The United States doesn't need it, nor was it ever intended to get it. Now, what this thing was is that this has been tossed about for a number of years. It's called the Keystone XL Pipeline. It went down in flames. The bill to approve it going through from Canada down to Louisiana and to Texas was shot down, which actually saved President Obama from vetoing the bill. It was expected that he was going to weigh in on it and veto had it been passed. This proposed pipeline is owned by a Canadian company called TransCanada. It would have run some 2,000 miles from Alberta, Canada, through 6 U.S. states. It would cross major rivers, major aquifers, all of them being in danger of irreparable damage should any of these pipes broke and leaked into these aquifers. The pipeline would end in these oil refining states, Texas and Louisiana. The oil would then be processed at those facilities and then put on ships and sent out into the world market. Not a drop of it would be allocated to any U.S. consumer. They were estimating about 830,000 barrels a day would be flowing through those pipes. Now, those in favor of allowing the pipeline, they claim that the project would have created thousands, if not millions, of jobs. The actual number was about 50 jobs.
This is to build it.
Yes,
right.
Because the all the material was going to be coming from China. The steel was from China, so no U.S. steel would be used in it. Plus, all the companies, all the contractors that would have helped build this from Canada through to the Gulf states already have these people hired. So it's not like they were actually hiring new people. It's like if you take a cross-country trip with your family and you pulled into a restaurant to eat, you're not creating jobs to feed you and your family. They already exist, and that's the same thing that helps. So the people, especially on the right, that were touting this as this huge job creation bill, it never happened. The other thing was there was bipartisan support for this. The Democrats and Republicans, although not enough, apparently they didn't get the 60 votes to pass this thing. They were in favor for the sole reason of retaining one Democratic seat in Louisiana. Senator Mary Landrieu is in a close contested runoff election with a Republican opponent. So what she felt that she needed to do was to be in favor of this thing, win some votes, and then the Democrats would keep another seat in the Senate. It didn't happen. So this may affect her runoff election with her Republican opponent. But it's not really a dead issue either, because they're going to take this back up in January once the House comes back from vacation.
So what are I don't know whether these pipelines, is leaking pipelines, is that a common problem? I mean, is there a real, how big is the risk, I guess, is the question I'm asking on this.
Yes, there is a huge problem. We've seen it a lot of times in Alaska. They don't always make headlines, but there's a lot of pipelines in Alaska that they break. In the United States, pipelines break all the time. Entire communities get damaged, the aquifers, the wildlife, you name it.
So isn't it bizarre?
So yes, it is an issue.
It's bizarre, isn't it? With the state of where we are with technology, there wouldn't be some sort of sensor device that would shut it down the moment there was any indication of a leak, and some sort of way that sensors could be used to say, "Yep, we've got a leak here. Let's shut the pipeline down until we get it fixed." Well,
there is. I mean, there's a pressure monitoring point. So if the pressure suddenly decreases, and then you can tell that there's a leak somewhere, it's going to take a certain amount of time, because these pipes go through areas which are unregulated or unmonitored for miles, scores of miles, and somebody needs to find out where this happens. It's like a cable. If there's a break in a cable line, somebody's got to figure out, okay, where did it stop?
Yeah.
And by the time you get to it, thousands and thousands of gallons of this crude is leaked all over the place.
Yeah, you might have to, if it's towards the end, you might have 2,000 miles of oil still to come down the line.
Exactly.
Yeah, wow.
The other thing, Phil, is that in the United States, and again, none of this oil was ever going to go to the American consumer. It is owned by TransCanada. They can do whatever they want with the oil. They're paying the refineries in Louisiana and Texas to refine it. Then it gets on a ship and it goes to wherever. We get to buy it back. But with gasoline now at still below $3 a gallon, and the United States producing more oil than it has been in decades, we don't need it. What it also does is this sort of keeping that fossil fuel flow going offers no incentive to go to an alternative energy source. It's like saying, well, we don't have our heroin problem because everybody can afford it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean,
where's the incentive?
But the big issue, I think, in this story is the fact that it is tar sands oil that we're talking about. It's basically extracting oil from sticky bitumen, and it's like 20% dirtier than conventional oil. In a world that's trying to go greener, to actually start using dirtier fuel because it's there, rather than just going, well, we want a greener environment, let's just leave it there. That's my big concern on that. But anyway.
And costs more to extract.
Yeah, exactly. So at some point, the economics have got to kick in where people just go, no, it's cheaper for us to use other types of fuel, alternative energy sources, rather than using this dirty stuff. Surely, if not, then, we've got the way we tax or control fuel, we've got that wrong. If things like this are allowed to happen. But anyway, now, Bill Cosby, another celebrity who had a good name, but now blighted by sexual assault allegations. Dr. Cliff Huxtable, of course, was his main character. He wasn't so squeaky clean after all, if all the allegations are true. What is the latest on Bill Cosby?
It's not been a good week for one of America's most beloved comics and a father figure. Bill Cosby, no less than 12 women have publicly accused Cosby of sexual assaults ranging from groping to rape over the course of some 40-plus years. 9 more people in the past few days have come out anonymously and have accused him. The common theme of these accusations is that Bill Cosby allegedly spiked the victims' drinks with drugs that rendered them incapable of resistance. These were, in most cases, as they're saying, were not consensual sexual contact. As a result, Cosby has been dropped from numerous talk show appearances. Concerts have been canceled. NBC has axed a proposed pilot, and the Retro Network TV Land has ceased airing old Cosby Show episodes. The victims were and are now prominent figures in many industries, ranging from show business to higher education to even lawyers. And what brought these accusations to the forefront was a YouTube clip that went viral a couple of weeks ago. This comedian, Hannibal Buress, was doing a show in Philadelphia, which is Cosby's hometown. And he did the show back in October. Buress, who was also black, said during the act, quote, "Bill Cosby is the effing smuggest old black man public persona that I hate. Pull your pants up, black people. I was on TV in the 80s. I can talk down to you because I had a successful sitcom. Yeah, but you raped women, Bill Cosby. It brings you down a couple of notches," end quote. That went viral. It allowed one woman to actually come out and write an op-ed piece using her own name, accusing Cosby of sexual assault. And then it just hit the fan. It has nonstop. There's not a day that goes by that somebody hasn't come out and accused him of this.
But no charges laid against him yet?
No, not yet. And this is another thing, too, is that now Cosby is refusing to address this issue in public. He has been asked by NPR. He's been asked by the Associated Press to comment on this. He is absolutely refusing to mention anything about this, to address this issue, calling them innuendos. What is odd is that, again, I do not even venture to guess why no one has come out and said this before, but this has been going on for some years. And again, we'll see where it goes, but no charges yet.
Right. But it sounds like from what you're saying, these are credible people, so there must be something in it.
They are. And that's the other thing it's odd is that these people have nothing to gain financially by this.
Right.
Because this happened so long ago. They are risking their credibility, their names, that of their families by coming out and saying, yes, I am a victim. This is what happened. Now, mind you, Bill Cosby has not been the most pristine person in the show business industry. A very strange murder of his son years ago. They kind of covered it up and said that this was a case of mistaken identity. He gave somebody a stranger a ride. He was killed, shot. They said it was a mistaken identity, some drug deal gone bad. Some years ago, a woman came out and claimed that Bill Cosby was her father. He said that he was not the father. He was helping out the woman's mother at the time. Later on, it was revealed that he was indeed the woman's father. She came out as an adult, and a settlement was made, another settlement made some years ago for an assault.
Yeah.
And now it's just piling on. And then last week, he was down in Florida to a sold-out performance, standing room only, standing ovation. So I don't know. It's just the most bizarre thing. This is like Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris all over again.
Yeah, no, and it's funny in those cases, and there's many more of them with celebrities in the UK. I mean, they go just unreported. Nobody speaks out for decades, and then all of a sudden, one person talks, and then all of a sudden, everyone goes, "Well, now someone's opened it up. I'm going to talk too." He
is a moneymaker, and I think one of the big disconcerting issues here is the fact that if these allegations are true, let's put that out there, is the fact that who knew and what did they know and when, if the entire industry has been hiding this, because Bill Cosby is a moneymaker as far as his shows are concerned, his product endorsements. This man at one time was being touted as buying NBC. NBC was in the network, was in serious financial straits. They went to Bill Cosby and said, would you buy this company to save it? That's how much money this guy has. That's how much clout he has. He's a highly respected comedian. People just adored this guy. Guys from like Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, they love this guy because he was an icon. Always worked clean, never any issues. But now the dirt is coming out, if they are true.
Yeah. So isn't it funny how we, they're almost like manufactured friends, celebrities, aren't they? That they are, people feel as though they've got some sort of affinity with them, even though they are total strangers. And they are total strangers. So why are we surprised when they behave in a way that we didn't expect them to behave? Because we don't know them. All we get is this manufactured spin that's created by their managers and by the broadcasters. We don't know Bill Cosby from a bar of soap. So why should we be surprised when there's allegations about the behavior of someone we just don't know? There's
a definite disconnect of the people that we hold up to such high esteem based on them
marketing
reading
hype.
A script.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I don't know. I think it's sick, and also it goes back to a rape culture that we have here in the United States.
Well, it's happening all over.
Very, very disturbing.
Well, it seems to be all over the world, doesn't it? Anyway, what a high note to end on. At least we're very credible characters, and you're never going to be able to dig the dirt and find anything on us because we've hidden it way too deep.
If you find any dirt on me, I've put it there.
That's right. Just absolutely to raise your profile a little bit. All right.
My life is an open sewer.
Richard Kazimer, good to talk. See you again next week.
All right, brother. Take care.